Hi, good morning, Aileen. Thanks a lot for joining me. Just to introduce you to our guest today, Aileen, I'm talking to Aileen Williamson, who is an executive housekeeping consultant who also does special training workshops around sustainability specifically. And we'd really love to hear what Aileen thinks about her sort of journey into the housekeeping hospitality world and where she thinks things are moving at the moment. We're also going to focus a little bit on some pain points in hotels around sustainability, especially with regard to fabrics and specifically hotel uniforms, which is really a sort of low-hanging fruit that hasn't been explored very much. So thank you, Aileen, and I'll just let you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks. Hi everyone. My name's Aileen Williamson, and I have been working in housekeeping from rooms all the way through to exec housekeeper over the last 30 years. And I've learnt a lot. And in more recent years, I've been looking at how we can introduce sustainability within our department. And I've collected together all sorts of suppliers and resources to provide sustainable housekeeping solutions. Most recently, I've been delivering workshops for head housekeepers to look at each individual property because all of every hotel is different and every hotel has different sustainability and standards challenges. So we look at each property as an individual and share best practice.
Well, that's brilliant. And when was the last time you did a workshop, and what did you find was most interesting about some of the questions that you were answering and some of the solutions you're trying to solve?
I did a workshop last week for Rubbermaid at their conference where they were releasing their new housekeeping trolley, and I had a group of housekeepers, London-based housekeepers, many from very high-end properties in the room, and the focus very much was without impacting the guest experience.
Great, great. So, do you
The
think
top
that
barrier,
do you
sorry.
think that some general managers and some organizations in the industry are worried that being sustainable means cutting back on the guest experience? Is that something that is more of a preconceived idea that is unfounded?
Absolutely, definitely. Um, I believe that sustainability should elevate the guest experience,
Mm, right.
yeah, without impacting the planet.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's our job to provide that sustainable stay.
So from your experience, and you have a lot of experience in the Middle East and in the UK, what do you think are some of the biggest sustainability challenges that hotels are facing? And from your feedback in the workshops and just from your looking at the landscape that guests might not even think about.
Yeah, so procurement and waste management, really.
Hmm.
If we can get our procurement right and address waste management issues, then we'll be on top of a lot of the things that we can achieve within housekeeping, chemicals as well, our cleaning products.
Right.
Um, they're the three main areas. But with focus on uniforms, while it may be a small area of what we do, it sets a standard for everything else. And what Crestwell have done is
Hmm.
created the perfect circular system for uniforms.
Right, right. Yeah, I think it's very interesting. When I came across Cresswell and what they're doing, because I used them in Hong Kong back this about 4 years ago now, and in fact, the uniforms that they manufactured for us are still being used now. They're very very durable, and we managed to get a fantastic sort of PR angle on it as well. A lot of guests could relate to the fact that we were making strides to to be sustainable because of the type of hotel it was. And we often hear about, towel reuse programs, donating things to charity and that type of thing. But I think that when it comes to less visible aspects like staff uniforms, I mean that I remember looking in our storerooms and there were just piles and piles of old uniforms
Absolutely.
that hadn't been used, just massive inventory. Every time you
Yeah.
get a new staff, they have a used uniform, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of turnover in our industry, obviously. So I think that it's an area. Do you think it's a sort of a pain point for a lot of hotels in terms of the fact you've got to get design fee, you've got to buy fabrics that sometimes run out, and most of the time they're not made from sustainable fabrics. Is it a pain point?
Absolutely. When we're looking at housekeeping holistically, and uniforms traditionally fall under the housekeeper's remit, when we look at the department holistically, we've got to look at everything we do, and
Mm,
purchasing and disposing of uniforms is part of that.
right.
And it is a huge, can be a significant chunk of budget.
Yeah. And I think typically, I got a feeling that in our industry, a lot of the department heads are sort of left to their own devices about where they get their uniforms from, and they a little bit of a tweaking here, a bit of tweaking there. And in the sort of traditional way that uniforms are sourced, it's actually quite cumbersome because you've got to get in a designer, then you've got to have all the measurements done,
Mhm.
make all kinds of presentations. And what I thought was quite cool about what Cresswell is doing is that they can actually put the DNA or the concept of the outlet into their AI system, and then it will create different models. Did you have a look at that? What did you think of it?
I have had a look at it, and it's certainly, it's an amazing use of AI, and the uniforms are so beautifully designed.
Mm, mm.
The standard, the quality of the uniforms is impressive.
Yeah, I
And
sent you some of the renderings for the
yeah,
Marriott in the Philippines. It is, and
oh,
it's
it's
quite interesting
beautiful.
how they show the outlet concept, all the renderings, and then how that kind of morphs into a style, which
Yeah,
is pretty cool.
and a theme that is followed through the hotel. So from your front guest agents through to your housekeepers, there's a beautiful theme running through their uniforms.
Right, right,
Makes you
right.
feel like a team.
Yeah. No, I'll see if we can overlay some of that on our conversation when we do the podcast. I wanted to share some interesting data with you. It seems that some of the companies that are doing this and have used it, and I know when I was at Hotel Icon, we were achieving about 28 to 30% reduction in carbon footprint per uniform item. What's your reaction to some of these kind of these sort of innovations?
I love them.
Yeah.
I love them. I think they take the these aren't guest problems, these are back of house problems. It's
Mm,
our job to reduce our carbon footprint, and that's every single item that we purchase.
right.
Understanding the life cycle of that purchase is is a new thing for housekeeping, is a new thing for most hotels, but it's something that we absolutely have to get our heads around now.
Have you
Uh,
actually come across any fabrics used for uniforms that are made from corn or, plastic or bamboo or anything like that?
of the things that I've seen are available out on the market, there's nothing that compares to
Mm,
Cresswell.
mm, mm. What's your opinion of these bacteria resistant coating technology, this Biontechs? Is that, I know during COVID it was quite big, but where do you see bacteria resistant uniforms being most helpful or usable? I mean, you've got housekeeping staff who are cleaning toilets and
Yeah.
garbage bins. Do you think it's something that hotels could look at?
I the jury's still out on the science. I do very much like biotech cleaning products, and I've done quite a lot of research into how and why they work,
Mm,
and I can understand how it offers a layer of protection to our team.
right.
Um, but yeah, at the moment, I'd have to say I need to do a little bit more research
Yeah.
into whether or not they weigh each other up.
Right, right,
But certainly, when it comes to addressing team well-being, it's potentially a great step forward.
right. I think what else was interesting for you with regard to the Cresswell solution in terms of how they are going to be different to the traditional model in terms of the design fees, cost saving, the inventory management, that side of it. As you know, just apart from the environmental impact with the greenhouse gas reduction, just they're talking about a sort of 10 to 25% cost saving.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's something that procurement people in the industry need to be looking closely at? How do you think that it would be a good way for them to sort of get this point across to industry now?
The the well, I mean, all GMs were always always looking at their budgets,
Mm,
um, and if we can show a reduction in cost for uniform per piece per consignment, it's got to be a winner for general managers.
right.
They're always looking for the best possible return on investment, and it
So,
seems that
yeah,
Cresswell do that on both sides. It's
right.
the purpose people planet, profit people planet, that they tick all the boxes.
Mm. When in your experience, working with chains and working with independent hotels, what do you see is the sort of the obstacles when it comes to making changes like this in terms of whatever product it is, whether it's a uniform or sheets? I mean, something new comes on the market, it's a no-brainer. Why is there so much resistance sometimes?
I think we're a very traditional industry, and
Mm,
introducing change for a head housekeeper is it can be a really big ask. There's a lot involved in changing a supplier, changing a product,
yeah.
changing a system that has worked up until now
Mm,
for something that is unknown. If your linen doesn't arrive, what's your backup plan? If your uniform, so you've got to have a real faith in your supply chain in order to change.
mm.
And so I think that's probably one of the biggest barriers.
So you think that cost would be number one. Number two is that possibly it's environmentally friendly. Obviously, there's a comfort factor, right, for the staff. I mean, some people
Yes.
might think that, how can recycled plastic bottles be, breathable fabric? But I mean, I've actually seen it, and it is, when you look
Mhm.
at it, it feels like cotton. It's
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
There's some great fabrics. The textile industry is doing some amazing things now.
Mm. I'd like to send you some. I'll get Cresswell to send you some of the samples. It could be
Great.
something that maybe you in your one of your future workshops
Absolutely.
you could share, because I think it's people like yourself who can actually share this this information with people in the industry who just not aware of it.
Yes. Yes.
I think
And
that.
I think once, because when I share these things, I share them as solutions to a problem that we've looked at fully,
Mm,
where we look at in the workshops, we look a little bit at the science of climate change and how it impacts our industry.
right.
So then they've got an understanding of, this is why I should choose this brand other than this brand.
Yeah. I think the other thing I liked about it was the fact that you can actually have your staff buy directly from the factory.
Yes.
So you're kind of cutting out the middleman, and
Yeah.
that's got to make it easier. I mean, when the staff comes on board, they're just given a link, and they can just order their own.
Which everybody can do. Everybody can order a uniform online or be supported to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So in terms of things like community partnerships, when it comes to hotels donating or using their reusable stuff and
Mhm.
donating it to recycled facilities, what are some of the uh, kind of community connections that you've had in your career? What typically do hotels do with waste that is reusable?
that is reusable. So, well, back in the day, it would be the cats and dogs homes, blankets and sheets, um, and quilts would be donated to the local cats and dogs homes. Anything that was reusable could be donated to family centres. Um, there are British Heart Foundation in the UK will collect items from large items, hospitality items
Yeah.
at refurbs. So traditionally, it would have all gone to landfill,
Mm,
but there are for the last, I would say, over the last 15 years, we have started to put more recycling in place within
yeah.
waste management, but we've still got a long way to go.
Yeah, and then sometimes there's a logistical thing because somebody's got to come and collect it and
Yeah,
pick it up and then distribute it, which also adds to the carbon footprint. But what I thought was an interesting concept that Cresswell's doing is recycling hotel uniforms and linens into school uniforms.
it's a great idea,
So
wonderful idea.
so they'll actually come and take back your old uniforms and your old sheets and towels and then recycle them, and they're also using them to make things like little tote bags for amenities for airlines, and even sort of carpet underlay
Yep,
for hotels, so it's all being reused.
it's all the life's being extended to as far as possible.
Yeah, which is a great CSR kind of initiative, and
Absolutely.
and that way the establishment can measure the kind of community impact directly, if they're actually able to produce something tangible.
Yes. Yeah. If we're saving waste from landfill, that's always a good thing. And
Mm,
if it's being reused in an ethical way, then it's a double win.
yeah. So looking ahead, what do you think the industry is going to look like in sort of 5 years down the road? I mean, we've got things like AI, and I mean, there's some big changes going on. What do you think in terms of where hotels will be buying from, or vendor recommendations, that type of thing? And what are some of the biggest obstacles you see?
I think technology is definitely the use of technology is definitely increasing, and in many ways welcome. We've got to embrace it. There are many things out there on the market now that allow us to be far more efficient than we were previously.
Mm,
Um, barriers, there's always the cost, and then
right.
the cost, that follows on with a training impact. Whatever we introduce, whenever we introduce something new, we've got to it's that instant impact on the guest experience. We need to know it's going to work straight away.
Yeah.
We can't have a first round of guests all complaining
Mm,
and then go, oh, we made a mistake, let's fix it. We don't have that luxury. We've got to get it right when we make a change. So and that costs time and money to organize, prepare, and see through. I
yeah.
think suppliers understanding that is really important.
Mm.
But
Well,
as for the
yeah.
future, I do see over the next 5 years that a lot of our traditional practices will change.
Right, right. And how do we kind of when we're choosing sustainable suppliers, what are some of the criteria do you think that, like, you as an executive housekeeper or a purchasing look for in obviously geographical, because you've got to sometimes import things and there's taxes and
Yeah.
shipping and that type of thing. But if you're looking at a uniform supplier, I mean, what are some of you've been in the position where you've made those sort of decisions or sat down with a procurement VP or whatever? What are some of the things that you're looking for or looking at?
So now, if I was sitting down and looking with procurement, saying, okay, how are we going to address this one? I would be looking for the product with the lowest carbon footprint.
Okay.
this it would be where I would lead from. We're Guests are now measuring rooms on their carbon footprint per room per night. It's
Right.
the key number that we need to reduce, and that is in our supply chain.
So is a cost reduction of 10% overall reduction compared to traditional models with, say, let's say the environmental impact was, say, 30%, and then you've got a lifespan of 50% increase. Are those good numbers?
They sound good to me.
Yeah.
They
Because that,
sound good to me.
yeah, I mean that's what I was able to measure when I was running, this
Hmm.
teaching research hotel in Hong Kong at Hotel Icon, and that was only a couple of years ago. And also the material innovation from the recycled bottles and textile waste and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, and if we can see, hospitality should do no harm.
Yeah, yeah,
So wherever we are making a purchasing decision, we should make it from the position of how can I do the least harm or the most good,
that's true.
and making those purchasing decisions from an ethical point of view, taking responsibility for the choices that we make.
Right,
We choose to take a uniform where we know it's been made in unethical conditions,
right,
or do we decide that as a company we take a stance and we will only use companies who can show that they are doing as little harm as possible?
right. So if you had those sort of key statistics and facts, for reference, would you feel confident to go in and talk to a senior person in the organization and say, look, I've come across this. These companies are using it, the quality looks incredible.
Yeah,
Let's give it a try. Would you feel confident to do that?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I really do like what Cresswell are doing.
Mm. Well, I'll send you some more, information and some samples, and maybe you can build it into your workshops and spread the good news. Because I think it's time that something like this, some good news has come out, especially coming out of Hong Kong, which is where they're based. Because Hong Kong, I think the market's quite dreary at the moment. It's not looking too good. So it's sort of a light at the end of the tunnel. It's good to see these startups, really trying to be innovative.
Yeah, it's brilliant to see.
What I know when we spoke earlier, you had some thoughts about back of house and sustainability and stuff like that. And I know you was kind of passionate about certain things. Is there anything that you'd like to share? And is there anything that you're particularly keen on talking about?
At the moment, waste management within rooms and within housekeeping is a bit of a hot topic.
Mm.
We've got new legislation in the UK which states that we have to have three streams of recycling, which housekeeping traditionally have never done. We've got our one black bag on the trolley, and everything from rooms goes into that bag.
Right,
Even if the hotel is investing in nice recyclable packaging for bathroom amenities or tea trays, it's still all going to general waste. So most recently, with the changes in the legislation, my I've had a lot of focus on how we address that area of our waste management, um, and seeing where there are similar models to Cresswell's,
right.
where they will take back and recycle where where appropriate. Continuing that circular model where we can.
Yeah, no, that's very good. I mean, for me, when I saw that presentation, the one I sent you, I mean, the key takeaways for me was the fact that, there's this sort of cost reduction of about 10% overall compared to, traditional uniform, maybe even more if they're using high-end fabrics like silk and things like that, in which some Thai brands are doing. And then obviously this environmental impact per uniform of what, 30%, and
Thirty
then
percent. Yeah,
the lifespan. I mean, you want something that's going to have a long durability. The fact that there's this material innovation, in fact, it will be very interesting. I'd love to actually go to the factory, I mean, if there was an opportunity for you to do, say, a workshop in the Middle East or in China, where you could actually go and have a look at the
That,
factory and see it all being put, that would be pretty cool, wouldn't it?
that would be really, really cool. I visited one of the biotech laboratories recently and spent a few hours with the scientists there, which was hugely, hugely fun, and
Yeah.
massively insightful.
When you were in housekeeping, working as a housekeeper, how did you used to sort of keep yourself informed about new ideas and new developments and new innovations like this sort of thing? Or was it just very hard to find time, just full on working and then go home and,
Yeah.
look after the family? I mean, do people really have time for that?
No, they don't. No.
Mm,
Head housekeepers don't have time. They're too busy doing their job on the floors to do that. It was the old role of an executive housekeeper. She would have
right.
been the one that would have driven innovation within her department. But
Mm,
executive housekeepers are becoming few and far between now.
yeah.
And we have a new generation of head housekeepers who seem to have stepped up into that role, but very much on the operational side rather than the innovation side.
Mm. How much of it is actually outsourced now in this country, in the UK, Eileen?
Most of your major brands are outsourced now.
Really?
Yeah.
So the executive housekeeper would be a full-time member of staff or somebody from an agency?
So with the outsource model, they have an area manager who kind of steps into the role of the exec, but has 6 or 8 hotels to look after.
Okay. So what do they spend most of their time doing?
Staffing issues.
Really? So it's just
Yeah,
like timetabling
folding
people,
door,
sourcing people. Yeah. So they're
product.
not really, because I mean, I've been to a few, I'm not going to name anybody, but the quality of the housekeeping was pretty poor, to be honest with you. I mean, some of these three-star hotels in London that I stayed at recently. In fact, it wasn't me; it was my daughter, and she was taking pictures of stuff. And I think that there's to some degree with certain um, kind of money making enterprises. There's certainly a lack of passion, or maybe they just don't have the time.
Yep, Richard. I always say a head housekeeper can only work for one boss,
Yeah.
and when you're a contract head housekeeper, you've got the company that you work for, your management company, who want productivity,
Mm.
and you've got your general managers who want quality,
Yeah.
and you're stuck between trying to keep them both happy, and it's a really hard place to be for a head housekeeper.
So when you're thinking about your course content and you're thinking about what subjects you want to cover, what are the areas that you kind of are finding success, that businesses want to be able to teach their senior people? I mean, what are the things that, I mean, I know you mentioned to me before that there were a couple of times where you didn't have a lot of uptake, and then it sounds like the most recent one with Rubbermaid seemed to be more productive. So, what do you think is the sort of winning solution to putting together a workshop like this? Is it, I mean, is it better to partner with a brand like Rubbermaid or Cresswell or somebody, and then go out and
Absolutely.
create workshops around that?
Yeah, I think so. I
Mm,
think that inviting people to attend and it is the way forward. Um,
mm,
Certainly with the Rubbermaid conference, it was a great experience for everybody there, um,
mm.
and they were a great company to work with.
And can you explain to the listeners a little bit about how that was formatted, where it was, and then how long you got for your workshop?
Oh yeah, of course. So Rubbermaid contacted me back at the end of last year to say that they were looking to see if I would like to run a workshop at their annual product event, which is held at the Queen Elizabeth Centre in London.
Right.
It's a 1 day event where they invite all their all their corporate clients, all their suppliers, and they unveiled um, their new things. So this time it was they had a new housekeeping trolley, a really nice, sturdy housekeeping trolley,
Mm.
and they asked if I'd run a couple of hour workshop or give a couple of hour presentation.
Right.
So I thought, yeah, that sounds good to me. Put the presentation together. They took care of all the marketing,
Great.
which was very useful for me. We worked together on the final slide presentation to ensure that it was up to standard. And I had 2 hours and a little lunch with my delegates.
Wow,
And
that's amazing. What did you actually cover in the workshop? I mean, how did you structure the topics?
so we started with a little bit of the science. For me, it's really important that we understand just the real basics of climate science because it helps to make informed decisions later on.
Yeah.
Then we have a look at have our hotels been affected by climate change in any way?
Mm.
And we do those in little, so we have lots of little breakout groups. And then we look at the carbon footprint of the industry and
Hmm.
our hotels and how we measure carbon footprints.
Right.
We'll measure our own carbon footprint and we look at the metrics used to measure them in hotels. And then we take a coffee break and we come back and we look at the key pillars: energy, water, waste, chemicals, and our people.
Hmm.
And we have a little chat around each of those. So energy use in most hotels could be reduced by 30% with clever building management
Right.
standard operating procedures in place. So we look at ways that housekeeping can impact that by the standing operating procedures of leaving empty rooms, um, and the building management system when we've
Yeah.
got the heating on and off. We look at water management, pressure coming out of the taps, and reporting of leaks. We look at waste management, which streams have we got, and how have we done a waste walk? What recycling systems are in place and what works? We look at chemicals, the use of biochemicals, and non-chemical cleaning options, moving
Mm.
away from the use of petrochemicals, and then how we support our people.
Oh, that's great. So, I mean, now, do you think that you might want to incorporate something about, sustainable fabrics and uniforms and fabrics and things like that?
Absolutely.
As being potential areas that are maybe sort of, unnoticed or unthought of. That
The back of house areas are easy to forget when putting a sustainability plan together.
Yes,
So
yes,
there's been
absolutely.
a lot of focus recently on the front of house stuff and the impact on the guests.
Mm.
And particularly from my workshop
Yeah.
last week,
Mm.
I took that we need to take a step back and look at what we're doing back of house
Yeah.
and really start our sustainable journey there.
Yeah. Yeah.
When
Oh,
our
that's very
staff
interesting.
understand that we've gone that extra mile to make sure they have sustainable uniforms to wear day in, day out, the message is
Mm.
huge.
Yeah. That's very interesting. So, I mean, that's an interesting idea that I could share with Cresswell, that maybe they should, engage with somebody like yourself to organize workshops around that area,
Hmm.
around, fabrics and uniforms, and how, as part of a bigger curriculum, but to actually sponsor housekeeping sustainability workshops, I think is a really great idea, because it shows the companies actually doing something worthwhile rather than just going out and selling something.
Yeah, and this is where Rubbermaid came from. They're aware that they're on a journey, but part of that journey was education.
Yeah, yeah,
So while
absolutely.
they're perfecting their products and processes, it's like, what else can we do? Right, we can educate, which is where they asked me to come in and run my workshop.
Right. Well, that's amazing. That's very interesting. So, is there any interesting kind of take from your side with regard to, or maybe something that you could quickly share as we wrap up, where um, an executive housekeeper wants to do something like what you're doing? In other words, to go and be a sort of freelance trainer, workshop organizer. I mean, what are some of the pitfalls and the challenges?
For me personally, it's that my heart and soul lie in housekeeping, not marketing. So
Yeah.
I sometimes struggle with the marketing and the more business side of it, because
Mm.
I'm very hands on and practical in what I do. So I think ensuring that you've got someone there that has got the business background to support you is really
Right.
important.
Okay, great.
But I do think there's a huge need for my generation of head housekeepers to empower the next generation.
Yeah, I mean, the only other person that I know is really doing this is Liz Lysette, who I mentioned to you, and she's from New Zealand. She used to work a lot in Hong Kong and in Singapore, in Asia, but I know she's sort of moving over this area. But um, the more and more that housekeeping is becoming part of the rooms division, and a lot of these roles are now being kind of merged. She told me that she's finding that if she can incorporate a bit of the room side, when I say room side, I mean the room, other departments within the
Mhm.
rooms division, into the workshop, in terms of teaching staff about P&L and costs and that type of thing. She finds that she's had quite a lot of interest from that. Just FYI, I was talking to her last week.
Oh, that's
Um,
interesting.
yeah.
I do think that it is, when I talk about housekeeping, I do very much think about rooms division.
Yes. Yeah.
The they are so interconnected. One can't
Yeah.
function without the other. So,
Yeah. Absolutely.
but I it's always useful to have them all in the room together when you're delivering training.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because when I worked in China, many years ago, back in 1996, I was with Shangri-La. I was running a hotel in Hangzhou, a big Shangri-La hotel, and there it was a joint venture, and they had a local party who were the majority shareholder. It was only about 51% was the local party and 49% was Shangri-La, and because they would make the decisions about the manning side of it. So it was interesting because one year, one guy, the executive housekeeper, would suddenly be moved to become in charge of HR, or the HR guy would suddenly become the executive housekeeper. They would move people around just to give them full exposure, with no training whatsoever, just sort of throw them in the deep end. And whereas here, you have to sort of work your way up the path. Whereas over there, it's a very different approach. They take you out of the maze and throw you in another one, and
Yeah,
you've got to kind of find your way. I mean,
yeah.
the way they look at it is that if you're capable of being management, you should be able to manage anything.
Mhm. Absolutely. I hotel in Dubai did something very similar.
Mm.
Chatting with the general manager, and he was moving the, I don't know, F&B financial controller was going to be the head housekeeper.
Yeah, yeah.
And did I think this was a good idea?
Yeah, it's interesting.
um, to which I said, I'm sure he's very capable given the right support.
Yeah, I think it's true about anything really. I mean,
Absolutely.
I think if you've got the right mindset and you care about your team, and you absorb things quickly. A lot of it is actually quite logical, to be honest with you. It's not rocket science.
It's not. And I think it does. I think every general manager should have done a stint in housekeeping.
Yeah,
And if
yeah.
you want to move on through the ranks within the industry, you've got to have at least turned a season, you know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, when I was doing my HND back at Portsmouth Poly back in the 80s, I worked at a hotel called the Pendragon Hotel, which was run in Southsea, near South Parade Pier, where all the early Mr. Bean stuff is made, and also at the Queen's Hotel. And I was a housekeeper there. I used to be making beds and cleaning toilets. We used to have to do 16 rooms a day. It was quite